Hi, this is TJ Almodovar with Macdonald Realty, and I'm here with property manager David Wong with Macdonald Commercial. So this is the biggest question everyone wants to know. How has COVID-19 affected the rental market?
The rental market has softened. We've seen from March and April, market has basically wasn't moving because people were worried. People were losing their jobs, not knowing what's happening. Right now, what we're seeing is overall, like stepping back. The market was already, in my opinion, the last 12 months peaked out and it was on a downturn. The COVID situation really accelerated it, and really we're now seeing the kind of not the trough, but we're seeing some stabilization. We've seen about 20% on the high end in terms of rent rates dropping, on average about 8 to 10%.
Got it. So we were already seeing a correction in rental rates, but COVID-19 has accelerated that. So what safety procedures are you guys doing now during your showings? Or can you guys still show rentals?
Initially we weren't. Now we are able to because of the easing. What we've done in lieu of having to go into person type of showings, especially even for empty units, was we've actually doing video. We are also wearing a mask. We are also wearing gloves if necessary, and also sanitizing prior and after in the unit. So especially when they're tenanted, most tenants won't allow you to go into the unit, and rightfully so. And so what we do is we go in there on our own with their permission, videotape the space, and then I do a narrative walkthrough, so it helps a little bit. And so if there's a serious interested party that wanted to see something and they sent me an email, I would respond back with that link, and then we can go forward from there.
Got it. And what difference are you seeing now with maintenance calls?
Well, definitely increase in maintenance calls because people are at home a lot, and it's good and bad. Good in the ways that we can prevent anything serious, but it seems like because they're home, they're looking at a lot of really minor things, and they're not emergencies. And especially when there's COVID, a lot of the contractors weren't working. And so we had an issue in terms of if there was an emergency, who would we be able to call? Because a lot of companies said we're not taking on anything. Restoration companies were really specific too. They would only take specifically very high-end emergencies. So we were kind of worried about what would happen if we did have a leak and we couldn't find somebody. It was going to be easy, but we're lucky we had good relationships with our contractors, and they were willing to help us out when it did happen. So we're lucky that way.
Awesome. And now moving on to another very, I guess, famous topic that people want to know about is Airbnb, short-term rental. International travel has been halted, and there's lots of vacancies in these short-term rentals. What are you seeing the effects of that with the rental market and prices?
Definitely downtown, where there's the highest concentration of Airbnbs, we've definitely seen drops in pricing. Prime example, 2-bedroom, 2 baths that usually command about $3,000 plus a month, and it varies in age. Say you're average about 4 to 5 years old, you would be able to command about $3,000, $3,300, depending on your level of the building. Right now, you'd be lucky to get 3. And even so, right now I have a 17th floor, 2-bedroom, 950 square foot space that was actually commanding about $3,100. Tenant moved out, obviously because they're saving money, to move into another location that's similar, but $400 cheaper. Big time difference. So we ended up having to rent that unit just recently for $2,800, back to the original rent rate that we initially took over 4 years ago.
So rents are kind of going back to what they were 4 years ago.
And here's the really important factor that we need to keep in consideration. It's the qualified tenant. That's actually the one that we want. And they are doing their homework, which is, they're doing the smart thing. They're looking at properties in their building, especially if they know the locale. They'll compare other listings, and they know that the listings similar to theirs or ours. They'll come and show us, hey, guess what? This is what's happening on another floor, higher than yours, and this is what the rent is. And so we like your space because maybe the view. We would offer a lower rate, and would you accept it? And so this is where we have to go back to the owner.
Got it. So tenants are now negotiating with the landlords.
Before that wasn't the case. They would just take it as is. It was quite the interesting dynamic. But the last 12 months, we're starting to see just started early stages, but then when COVID hit, it was totally different.
And what do you think was like the peak of the rental market? Here for residential.
Yeah.
We saw it in 2016,
Yeah, I think it was probably 2018.
2018.
We saw a peak. I definitely saw when we put a listing out, there were definitely lots of increase. Today, it depends on the price point, it depends on the neighborhood, it depends on a lot of factors. And if your listing isn't clear, then also that is important, because I think the old times when the market was hot, you could put anything out, didn't have to have a picture on it, and people would call you.
So yes, you need to have good photos, even videos to get tenants to go see your
And a
home.
good profile, like you want to kind of give that person some idea what they're looking for in terms of how many bedrooms, is it furnished, unfurnished, does it allow pets, what type of fixtures, the kitchen, I use the, master chef type kitchen, because if it's set up that way, it looks good, the home cook.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And then going back to the topic of short-term rentals, I'm not sure if you have the stat or if you have a stat in your head, just because of the long-term rental market, it was expanding in the last, 5 years and taking away from the inventory of rentals. How much do you think that affected the actual cost of rents, especially in downtown? Like what percentage would you say?
I would say on the high end 20%, mainly because people were making so much money on Airbnb compared to a long-term rental that it made sense. Then with the licensing requirements and clampdowns from the stratas and bylaws prohibited Airbnb, that reduced. And then COVID really kind of put the nail in the coffin, because there's no one coming. No one's willing to pay that month daily rate. So you have a mortgage, you have to pay it. And so you as an owner, you're gonna need to have to figure out a solution here. And so all of a sudden we've seen a lot of these fixed furnished units coming on to the condo market, competing with our unfurnished units. And the tenants, actually, the people who actually come to see it are spot properties. I always ask this question, since they tell me stories, and I always like to learn from them, because I don't get a chance to see what they see.
Got it. Okay, that's actually a good tip. And going back to how COVID's affected the market, what segments of the market are you seeing having the biggest negative impact?
Mainly downtown, and I should say that because with some caution now, because we're seeing some stabilization, because people who are savvy, they're knowing how to price. And so if your price point is going to become affordable in their mindset, they're not going to go out to Burnaby or Coquitlam. And so they're going to stay in the core, because there is an ecosystem there. There's the nightlife and all that. So it's still a lot of the younger generation. The software developers are still huddling and hubbing down there. So that's the kind of profile we're seeing.
Are you seeing, say for example, other cities or suburbs that are getting more demand now because of COVID?
Burnaby, for example, is a very popular spot because it's so central. You got Brentwood, you got Metrotown, you got Lougheed, and you got Edmonds that are building those town centers. And right now, Brentwood coming up quickly, there's a lot of demand there because they're all brand new units. They're larger. They are closer to the SkyTrains. There's 3 SkyTrain hubs there that you can go on. So that's trying to take away a little bit of the weight from Metrotown. Metrotown still demand, but again, price point. We had to, in Metrotown, had to drop the price on one of our newer units, about a year and a half old, a little bit, just so that we could attract a qualified tenant.
Okay, just so, say for example, you had a 500 square foot 1 bedroom in downtown Vancouver. Compare that to a 500 square foot 1 bedroom in Brentwood. What are the price points on those? What's the difference?
So let's use One Pacific, because I can use that as a real comparable. 505 square feet, 1,900. We've increased it maximum 1950. When I had to re-rent it again, I've had to pull it back down.
That's for downtown?
Downtown.
How about for Brentwood? Well, how much is something
We're probably looking
comparable?
at probably 16, 17.
Okay.
If you ask me higher than that, I think you're going to have a harder time renting it, just because there's so much availability. I'll give you a really good example. The Escala came up in October, and it's a beautiful building, and it's on Gilmore and just before Lougheed. And what had happened was, when it was open for occupancy, 66 2-bedroom, 2-baths came up for rent.
Wow.
40 plus 1-bedrooms came up for rent.
Wow.
So you imagine how much absorption you have to have into that market to be able to get the price point. So I had to wait a little longer for some of my properties. They range from 24 to 2,600.
Wow.
So
For a 1 bedroom.
2 bedrooms.
For a 2 bedroom. So, okay, the rental rates are getting a little bit closer to each other from downtown Vancouver to newer, but it's newer product in Brentwood, whereas downtown Vancouver you get you get concrete, you get high rise, but it's a little bit older, 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, and you may not have nice amenities. Redwood buildings tend to have a lot of nice amenities. Swimming pool, spa, yoga. Your exercise room is not the little box with the universal in there. It's actually quite a nice gym.
So we just spoke about the part of the market that has been negatively impacted. On the other side of the spectrum, the properties that have been in the rental market positively impacted.
Yeah, single-family homes are becoming really popular because I'm noticing families are coming together. It's usually two families coming together to afford to pay the rent, or we get professionals of 3 to 4 coming together, sharing the rent too, to rent a house versus a condo where you have 2 bedrooms and you're really limited. You have a house, you have parking, either street parking, garage parking, you have driveway, you have lawn space, you have green space. So there's a lot more attractiveness, especially now when I've seen geographics in Vancouver, Mount Pleasant, East Vancouver for sure, because that seems to be this nice middle class hub. Lots of families are really huddling towards there because it's convenient for lots of shopping and just commuting along the transit lines. In West Side Vancouver, the higher end homes, anything below 5,000, 4 to 5,000 seems to be a popular type of rent affordability. Above 5, I think we're going to have a little bit harder because that moves out a lot of people's budgets.
Okay, so you're talking about the threshold in West Side Vancouver is 5,000. On the east side of Vancouver, what do you feel that threshold is?
That is about 3,500 for a house, let's say 3,000 square feet, 25 to 3,000 square feet. And why it depends on the house too. If it's a Vancouver special, if it's too small, then it may not be as marketable. You have the older Vancouver homes that actually have bigger rooms, maybe not as many bathrooms, but they actually have the space.
Got it. Okay. And back to, topic of COVID-19. There's the government's been issuing some subsidies, and what percentage of your portfolio have you seen taking advantage of that rental subsidy?
About 10%.
10%?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that higher or lower than what you anticipated?
That's lower than I expected. I thought we would have a lot more. I thought we would be going to 50%, but it wasn't, so it's all good. It's not nothing wrong with the subsidies because they really, all they do, they help the tenant to offset some of their costs, especially if they lost their job. So for us, we just comply and assist and fill out the forms accordingly, and so far so good. Everything's working out.
And then you spoke about this earlier, COVID-19 kind of accelerated the softening or regulating of the rental market. Do you foresee the rental market softening further from what it is now?
Good question. I initially thought it was going to probably push it further down, and I don't believe that's so now so much because the fact there's still, it's a staple, food and shelter. And people who have already looked for cheaper places to live have, because they've had the time. And what's going to probably happen, I don't know, if they lift the evictions, then that may accelerate a lot more properties to be vacant for the wrong reasons maybe. I don't know. But I think we're going to stabilize for now, and unless we have a major meltdown economically where people, like another 10% of the workforce loses their jobs, I don't see it happening. I think we're stabilizing. We're in the trough now.
Okay, so we are pretty stabilized right now. So we'll wrap this up, but let's wrap it up with some tips for our viewers.
Sure.
So let's get some tips for tenants, landlords, and investors. Let's start with tenants.
Tenants. So if you're looking at a property, most important thing to do, I know you're looking at a lot of different properties. If you really like that property, I always put that in my listing. Tell me about yourself and how many people are going to live with you. Take that extra time because I'm sure you're going to get a better response than pushing the reply button, hey, is it available? Because there's a number of those pre-templated responses where we don't know if you're serious or not. And most of the time I've done the math. When we actually call back, most of these people don't even remember what they clicked.
Okay, so kind of have a write-up, give them information, even include some maybe photos if you have pets and stuff like that.
Pets is really important, especially pets, because owners are really stigmatized by the negativism of pets, and I think it's something that I have to educate owners that it's not the pet, it's the owner that caused the pet to do the damage. But that's becoming more prevalent. People are more willing to accept this once we have that as a pet friendly requirement approval. So we will say we may approve it depending on your pet.
And tips for landlords.
Landlords, depending on your situation, your portfolio, do your math. If you're going to buy a property and rent it, do your math to make sure you're able to either break even, or if you're going to be able to cash flow it, great. But be able to put some contingencies in for repairs, because when you buy a home, no matter if it's brand new or not, there's always something happening.
Okay, and what percentage of the, you think people should have in contingency for the rentals?
I would say, on the higher end, 10%. If you have it left over, it's all yours. It's not going anywhere. And if you actually happen to have something down the road, you have the money versus having to take it from the rent. Or if you're in a strata, worst case scenario, you'll still have to pay the strata fees. If they increase the fees, you still have to pay those. And insurance is, that's been really expensive.
Okay, and lastly, tips for investors. What is easy to rent out right now? Where are you getting the best yields?
I would look and focus on family-centric areas, such as what we discussed earlier. East Vancouver, there's Mount Pleasant. Burnaby has like single-family homes. Condos in some locations, because there's just so many of them, and it's just going to be a harder justification. If you're going to get a yield on a condo, great. You must have paid a lot down, but if you aren't, because you have to build in all the costs.
Yes, with 20% down and being able to be cash flow positive in good areas, it's very difficult.
Yeah, my guesstimate is if you're lucky to get 3% gross yield, not net, you should be happy, and that's not a lot of wiggle room if you happen to have a major repair, refrigerator you have to replace. All the condos, just to give you an example, the condos with those nice little refrigerators, they're not cheap. They're like $1,000 to $2,000 for one.
And they break down easier.
And they break down within a couple of years. So, when you buy it, that extended warranty is worthwhile buying, especially if you're renting it.
Okay, another tip for landlords and investors: buy the warranty for your appliances.
Yep, it's $200, and it works for 5 years. 1 + 4 would be 5 years. At least you get some coverage. Worst case scenario, it doesn't do anything. So,
got it. Great. Thank you so much for the useful information today. Share with everyone your Instagram handle.
It's at David_K_Wong.
So at David_K_Wong on Instagram. This is TJ Almodovar with Macdonald Realty. Until next time.